Hello, welcome again to Expounding the Bible. I'm your host, Nathanael Morel. In this study, we want to look at the Daniel diet. And was Daniel a vegan? Because the Daniel diet is very interesting and is very, very special and in particular in regards to health reform and the diet that should be eaten. We see that Daniel's diet, a lot of people try to put it as something new, which is really is not even new. It's something that God gave us from the beginning. We see that the Daniel diet is nothing but the Eden diet, which is God's original diet for mankind. And then we want to look at why did Daniel choose to eat the type of food that he ate? Why did Daniel reject the meat, the king's meat? And was he a vegan? Because a lot of people try to put Daniel and categorize him with being a vegan. All that Daniel never ate meat before. He never ate meat. He never touched it. And I've seen people, they get their food, whether it's salad with some fruits or salad and vegetables, and they take a picture, they put it on social media, hashtag Daniel diet, veganism. And I particularly myself, I'm a vegetarian. I try to eat as most plant-based as possible. I stick away from meat products as much as I can. I might eat a little bit of fish every now and then, every once in a while. But in regards to Daniel eating meat, we want to see whether Daniel was a vegan, and we want to see why Daniel chose not to eat that king's flesh and instead eat that fruits and vegetables, nuts and grains. Let's see that. So let's open our Bibles to Daniel chapter 1. Daniel chapter 1, and we will look at that. Daniel chapter 1. And we want to read, well, here we have the story, you know the story of Daniel. Daniel, one of the lines, the royal seed, a nobleman in Judah. And the king comes and carries him away. And we want to pick it up in verse 5. In verse 5 of Daniel 1, it says, "And the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat, and the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king. Now among these were the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave them names, and they renamed Daniel was Belteshazzar, and he named the others Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And it says that a portion of the king's meat was given to them to nourish them." It says in verse 8, we read in verse 8, it says, "But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat." Then it says, "Nor the wine by which he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself." Now God had brought Daniel into favor and tender love with the prince of the eunuchs. And the prince of the eunuchs said unto Daniel, "I fear my lord the king, who hath appointed your meat and your drink. For why should he see your faces worse likening than the children of your sort? Then shall ye make me in danger of my head to the king." So the king had his special prince of the eunuchs, who was in charge of Daniel, Shadrach, and Abednego, and the rest of the children of captivity, to feed them according to what the king gave them to eat, so they could be healthy and strong and intellect of mind, so give them wisdom and understanding. So they gave them the Babylonian diet, if you want to call it that, what the heathens ate. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he will not defile himself with the king's flesh. Now, a lot of people try to say that this was Daniel making a stand versus meat eating, which is not really so. Why? Because Daniel says he's not going to defile himself with the king's meat. Now, let's look at that word defile. Now, why would Daniel say it would be defiling himself if he ate the king's food? Now, watch this. First, Ellen White in the Spirit Prophecy lists these three things, which are all biblical. First, the king's food was unclean. If you go back to the book of Leviticus, and in Leviticus, you're going to find in Leviticus chapter 11, I believe, you are going to find the difference between clean and unclean food. God has a list of foods, of meats, that are clean and are unclean. Out of the birds, this is what you shall eat, this is what you shall not eat. Out of those that crawl on the ground, this is what you shall eat, this is what you shall not eat. Cows, those that have a split hoof and chew the cud, like cows and goats and sheep, they chew the cud, they have a split hoof. Those are clean animals to eat. Those that chew the cud but do not have a split hoof are unclean. Those that have a split hoof but do not chew the cud are unclean. So they have to chew the cud and have a split hoof. Swine, pork, they don't chew the cud. They have a split hoof, but they don't chew the cud. They swallow everything whole. They are unclean. And even scientists today are saying that they are one of the most, that pig's food, pork, is one of the worst food you can ever eat. Why? Because they don't sweat, and by not sweating, they keep all that dirt inside of themselves, and there are so much bacteria, so much contamination, so much germs living inside pork that no matter what degree of temperature you cook it on, you're still going to ingest it. It's not going to go away. You cannot kill it. And they say that pork eating is one of the number one in causing various cancers and sickness. Why? Because the food is unclean. It's not clean for us to eat. If you read Leviticus chapter 11, you also find in the fish of the sea, the clean animals that live in the water are those that have scales and that have fins. A shark has fins but does not have scales. Lobster, shrimp, doesn't have scales and it doesn't have fins. Unclean food. And when you look at sharks, lobster, shrimp, you wouldn't eat a cockroach, would you? We wouldn't eat cockroaches. Why? Because they're dirty, they're disgusting, they eat anything they find. You wouldn't eat a vulture. Why? Because they're the ones that clean the earth. They eat everything that's dead and rotten. Same thing with lobster, same thing with shrimp, same thing with pork. They eat anything. I actually went to this place. I went to SeaWorld one time, and they had a big shark tank, and they were explaining some of the things of the shark, and they said one of the things that sharks are very useful to our planet is that they are the filters of the sea. They clean out all the garbage. So you are what you eat. So if a shark eats garbage, guess what he is? He's a garbage collector. His flesh, his meat is garbage. Lobster, shrimp, they eat the waste of the fish. They eat garbage. So if they eat garbage, their body is made of garbage. You eat the shrimp, you eat the lobster, guess what nutrients you're eating? Garbage. Waste, if you want to call it that. So why would we do that? So God is trying to give us a clear definition. What is clean, what is not clean. And if the animal eats garbage and you're partaking of the animal, guess what you're having in yourself? Garbage. And when you fill yourself with garbage, your body is going to act like garbage. It's not going to be healthy. So no wonder we got a lot of sickness. We got tumors, we got cancers, we got heart disease. We got unhealthy problems. Why? Because we are eating unhealthy foods. So Daniel says, according to the law of Moses, it will be defiling myself, making myself unclean if I were partake of these foods. So That's one reason why Daniel didn't eat the king's meat, because it was unclean food. Now, a second reason why he did not eat the meat, even if it was, let's just suppose the king's meat was unclean meat, but let's just suppose it was clean. Daniel still wouldn't eat it. Why? Because it wasn't prepared properly. You go back to Leviticus. God commanded the children of Israel what to eat, what to not eat, and the things that he commanded them to eat, he says you got to prepare it a special way. You got to drain the blood out. Take the blood out. Take the fat out. Take all those things out. Do not eat meat with the blood in it. And today that's what we do. We kill the animal, we take the meat out, and we just put it to cook. We don't drain the blood out. It's red meat. The blood is still there. Steak, when you take the meat, it's raw. You got a nice chunk of meat, it's red. Why? There's still blood in there. There's still blood in there. When you put it to cook, there's still blood in there. That's what gives it that nice sweet savor. God says, no, you're supposed to take the blood out, take it out, or we call it, I believe it's kosher meat, which is how the way the Jews still eat meat today. Again, it tastes a little different. There's no blood in it, and it's more gummy, it's more chewy. I've never had it, but again, you season it, and it tastes just as good. But again, there's no blood in it. That's the correct way of eating the stuff. So Daniel still wouldn't eat it. Why? Because it wasn't prepared properly. There's still blood in that meat. These people are Babylonians. They're going to give you what they think is right, not what God thinks is right. These are pagan heathens. So God says, drain the blood out. These guys don't drain the blood out. The Babylon, they don't drain the blood out. They just have everything what they have right there. Another reason why even if the blood was drained out, let's just suppose even if the blood was drained out, another reason why they wouldn't partake of it is because it was offered up to their idols. And though Paul corrects this in Corinthians, nowadays it doesn't matter whether the food is sacrificed to idols or not. Paul says you worship one God, the one true God. Doesn't matter. But in Daniel's day, it did. And in Daniel's day, if you were to partake of a food that has been sacrificed to an idol or has been blessed by an idol, a false god, in Daniel's time, that will be an open statement of rejecting God and accepting false worship, false gods. So Daniel says, I cannot partake of this food. Why? Because I'll defile myself because it's unclean. 2, I'll defile myself even more because it still has the blood in it. And 3, I'll defile myself to the utmost because it'll be an open rejection, an open denial of denying God, rejecting God. So those 3 things, Daniel says, I can't eat of this food. And Daniel came up with a plan. It says in verse 11, it says, Then said Daniel to Melzar, whom the prince of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, or Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Daniel said to him, Prove thy servants, I beseech thee, 10 days, and let them give us pulse to eat and water to drink. Then let our countenances be looked upon before thee, and be looked upon before thee, and the countenance of the children that eat of the portion of the king's meat, as thou seest, deal with thy servants. So he consented to them in this manner, and proved them 10 days. And at the end of the 10 days, their countenances appeared fairer and fatter in flesh than all the children which did eat of the portion of the king's meat. Then Melzar took away the portion of their meat and the wine that they should drink, and gave them pulse. So Daniel here says, all right, Melzar, I'm going to tell you something. I'm not going to eat that meat. It's defiling my body. It goes against the law of Moses, which God gave us. So I'm going to tell you what. Prove me 10 days. Prove us 10 days. Give us 10 days and give us pulse. And at the end of the 10 days, compare our bodies and how the way we look and our health, compare us to them that continue to eat the king's meat, unclean food. Now, Daniel says, give us pulse to eat. Now, what is pulse? What is that? If you look in the original Hebrew, go back and look at this word in the original Hebrew, pulse. Pulse means something that's sown, or vegetables, it says. Vegetable is something that you sow, you plant. Fruits is something that you sow, you plant. So Daniel told Melzar, for 10 days, feed us nothing but fruits, vegetables, nuts, and grains, and seeds. Give us that diet, which, when you study back, when you keep studying, is the original diet that God gave Adam and Eve. Daniel and Eve didn't eat meat. They ate fruits and vegetables, nuts and grains. God says all these trees yielding fruit are for you to eat. Back in Genesis. So Daniel was asking for the Eden diet. Even though we call it Daniel diet or the Daniel fast. So that's what Daniel was having. And it says at the end of the 10 days, they went and compared Daniel and his friends to the rest that were eating the king's meat. And it says, at the end of the 10 days, their countenances appeared fairer and fatter in flesh than all the children which did eat the portion of the king's meat. So they appeared fairer and fatter. Not fatter as in obese, but fatter, more stockier, more muscular, more capable of doing the job. And the others that were with the king's meat, eating unhealthy food, eating garbage, drinking wine, and that wine is alcohol. And Daniel says, give us water, not wine, not alcohol. How do we know it was alcohol they gave him? Because alcohol, the Bible says, wine, strong drink, alcohol, fermented, is a mocker. Daniel never mocked anybody. So if Daniel would have partaken, would have had wine to drink, fermented alcohol, he would have been mocking. Daniel wasn't mocking. Daniel had water, fruits and vegetables, nuts, grains, and seeds. And at the end of the 10 days, he was found to be more healthier. Daniel and his friends were more healthier than the rest. They were more, and not just healthier in your body and blood, but they were more muscular, they were more smarter, because guess what? Now that you're starting to eat healthy, you get healthy blood, you get healthy meat, you get a healthy mind. A healthy mind. So that's why Daniel had the ability from God to understand the meaning of dreams. Why? Because he had a clear mind. He understood. God can talk to him easily because his mind was uncorrupt. He couldn't talk to the others who were eating garbage because their minds was garbage, because what they ate was garbage, unclean food. So God can't talk to you if all you're eating is unclean food. God has to talk to you when you're eating the right stuff. So Daniel here took a stand, even though it was uncommon in his place. Daniel and his friends took a stand to eat healthy and keep following God and reject the commandment of men. Or he could have partook of this unclean food and said, God will forgive me, God will still be with me, and gain favor with the king, but he would have rejected God. Instead, he accepted God's plan, rejected the king's food, he accepted God's plan, and because of that, he was more healthier, he was more able to communicate with God, and he ended up getting favor with the king anyway. So he still won at the end of the day. Now, as for the others, who were also trained to be wise men to King Nebuchadnezzar, when King Nebuchadnezzar had the dream and he wanted an interpretation, these guys couldn't help him. Why? Because they had a polluted mind. Meanwhile, Daniel, Meshach, and Abednego, who had a clear mind, They were able to learn the most difficult things that took people years for them to understand. And Daniel, Meshach, and Abednego can recite it like if it was a child's poem. Why? Because God was working through them. They were eating healthy foods. Now, was Daniel a vegan? Because a lot of people say Daniel never ate meat. People always associate Daniel's diet with veganism. Now, vegan is okay. You want to eat vegan? Fine. That's great. But the vegan religion is outside of harmony with the Bible. You got people that just go way beyond the line in terms of what they eat. Some people, they just want to eat raw foods. Okay, fine. If you want to eat raw foods, that I'm not going to bother with that. But don't say that I'm eating raw foods, I'm righteous, and you're not, so forget about you. A lot of people, that's a wrong attitude. A lot of people don't even want to hear what other people have to say because they eat meat. I go, that's a wrong attitude. If you want to win somebody over, you have to do it in loving kindness and way, and show me biblical proof. Now, let's see if Daniel was a vegan. Let's jump over to Daniel chapter 10. Daniel chapter 10. Let's look at Daniel chapter 10 and let's read verse 2 and 3. Let's read verse 2 and 3. Daniel says, in those days, I, Daniel, was mourning 3 full weeks. Daniel just had a vision. Didn't know the interpretation. Didn't know the answer of the vision that God gave him. So Daniel started mourning. He started fasting. He started praying for God to give him an answer. And it says that he was mourning. He was fasting for 3 weeks. In verse 3, he says, I ate no bread, neither came flesh nor wine in my mouth. Neither did I anoint myself at all till 3 whole weeks were fulfilled. So he says, I was fasting for 3 weeks. I was mourning for 3 weeks. I was praying for 3 weeks. I ate no bread, ate no flesh, nor drank wine. Now, I show this to some people, and they say, well, Daniel here was listing the things that he never ate. I go, how can you say that? Because why would Daniel be fasting from something he never ate before? I've never eaten beef before. I've never eaten beef in my life. I'm a vegetarian. I've never eaten beef. So if I decide to fast, then I'm going to say, people are going to tell me, what are you fasting from? I said, I'm fasting from eating beef. Okay, I never ate beef in the first place, so why would I fast from something I never ate? So why would Daniel be fasting from something he never ate? You have to fast from something that you eat. I like eating rice and beans. That's my favorite, rice and beans with tomatoes. Now I can say I'm fasting from rice and beans and tomatoes. Why? That's something I eat. I can fast from it. I can't fast. You cannot fast from something you never eaten. You mean to tell me, in verse 3, I ate no bread. You mean to tell me Daniel never ate bread in his life? I drank no wine. Wine, this is unfermented wine. This is grape juice he's talking about. Why? Because alcohol wine is a mocker. Daniel never mocked. So this is grape juice wine. You mean to tell me Daniel never drank grape juice? Daniel says, neither came flesh in my mouth. You mean to tell me Daniel never ate meat? Daniel here is saying the foods that he did eat. He ate bread, he ate meat, and he drank grape juice wine. Now, why did Daniel reject the king's meat in chapter 1, but here in chapter 10, Daniel says, I ate flesh, or I ate meat? Why? Because there's a difference. As we said before, the king's meat was unclean food, was prepared improperly, and was sacrificed to idols. This meat, Daniel's saying, Daniel was having flesh, he was having meat according to how the way God in the law of Moses said to have it. You get the meat, you purge all the blood out, then once you cook it right, first it has to be clean food, whether it's goats, sheep, lamb, steak, chicken, those are all clean foods. Duck is an unclean food. You go read that in Leviticus chapter 11. But the point is that Daniel had the clean food. He prepared it right, took the blood out, and he had it blessed of God. It wasn't sacrificed to no idol. There's a difference between that and how the way the king's meat was. Unclean, with the blood, not prepared right, sacrificed to idols. Daniel here is eating flesh the right way. How the way that God told us how to eat it. Now, you bring it down to today. Today, it's not a sin to eat meat. If a person tells you it's a sin to eat meat, that's crazy. That's absurd. It will be a sin if you eat meat prepared the wrong way. If you eat unclean meat. Why? Because that's a thus saith the Lord commandment. Thou shalt not eat meat with the blood. Thou shalt not partake of unclean food. There, God is telling us a commandment. It will be sin if you partake of the meat like that. But it's not sin to eat meat the right way. Now, the problem is that today, in Daniel's day, this was like 3,000 years ago, the meat was more healthier back then. Today, we got corruption going on. We got diseases flying around back and forth. And the animals are more diseased and more sicker in health today than they were back in Daniel's day. So today is not a sin to eat meat, but why would you eat meat if you know the animal has a very good chance to get sick? You got people in their farms having sick animals, and they deliver them to the slaughter for you to pick in the store and eat. So if the animal is unhealthy, why would we partake of it? It's not sin. Now, if you take something that's unhealthy, it can cloud your mind and lead you to do sin. But eating it is not particularly sin. It can lead us to sin. Now, Ellen White says, I believe in Manuscript Releases, Volume 16, page 173, I believe, she says, in regarding to Seventh-day Adventists, I'm going to paraphrase it. She says, I would strongly urge for Seventh-day Adventists, especially Seventh-day Adventist colporteurs and canvassers, she says, I prefer them not to eat flesh foods, not because it is considered sin, but because it is unhealthy. So it's not that meat eating is sin, it's just unhealthy. Why will I eat cows? Cow is a vegetarian animal. But why would I eat the cow who's eating the plant? Instead, I can just eat the plant straight firsthand. I don't have to have that from the cow and then me eating it secondhand. I don't need that. I just go to the straight source. It's much more healthier. It's a plant-based diet. And people say, you're a vegetarian. Well, where do you get your protein from? Nuts have a lot of protein. Beans have a lot of protein. Rice has a lot of protein. Broccoli has a lot of protein on it. You have a combination of fruits and vegetables. There are peaches, vitamin A, vitamin C, strawberries, vitamin C. You got fruits and vegetables that are just filled with iron. I believe a steak is about what, 20 grams of protein. You get a cup of beans, black beans, let's say, and it has almost as much protein as the steak has, maybe even more iron, more potassium. These things have chia seeds, very nice. You could hardly taste them. They don't have a taste to them. You put them in your shake, you put them in your food, you sprinkle them around in your salad. Just a tablespoon of chia seeds carries 7 grams of protein on it. Big time omega-3s. So you can find everything out here in a plant-based diet. Daniel was not a vegan. Daniel ate flesh foods, but he ate them the right way. Today, it is strongly urged that we become vegetarians. Why? Because now the animals are becoming diseased. I'm not sure if it was Time magazine, maybe it was National Geographic. They said Seventh-day Adventists live on average, I believe it was 7 or 10 years longer than the average person. Why? Because we have a health message. Look at the things Ellen White said about health. She says tea and coffee was bad. Caffeinated beverages was bad. Smoking was bad. Tobacco is injurious to our health. Meat eating was bad. She said that back in the 1850s. And now, 1950, 1980s, 2000s, now is when the scientists are coming together, testing these foods and saying, yeah, these foods are bad. The scientists are unknowing, confirming what Ellen White has already said by the grace of God more than 150 years ago. No wonder Seventh-day Adventists live longer than the average person. Why? Because we got the Bible, we got the Spirit of prophecy, we got Ellen White as the prophet of God, and God through Ellen White tells us what was healthy and what was not, combined with the Bible. The body is the temple of the Lord. The body is the temple of the Lord. So we got to take that all into consideration. Kellogg, Dr. John Harvey Kellogg, he was years ahead of his class when it comes to being a doctor. Where did he get all his information on health from? Ellen White. Ellen White got it from God and the Bible. It's all there. So no wonder Adventists, Seventh-day Adventists, have a health message. It's part of the three angels message. It's the right hand of the gospel. One of the things is to be saved and to have healthy bodies. So Daniel had a Daniel diet. He stuck with fruits and vegetables, nuts and grains. He even had meat prepared the right way. Prepared the right way, not no Kentucky Fried Chicken thing. So if we want to have healthy bodies, we would also take heed to Daniel. Eat fruits and vegetables, eat nuts and grains. That's the thing that God gave us to eat back in the Garden of Eden. And in heaven, there will be no meat eating. Why? Because in the Garden of Eden, there was no meat eating. It was fruits and vegetables, nuts and grains. And God is going to bring back the Garden of Eden, and He's going to bring it back to the earth. Once He finishes the wicked with hellfire, He's going to make the earth anew, and He's going to bring back the Garden of Eden. And the same thing that we ate in the Garden of Eden, we're going to eat in heaven, we're going to eat in this earth, and it is not going to be flesh foods. So if we're not going to be eating flesh foods in heaven, why should we eat flesh foods now? Why don't we stick to the Daniel diet? Why don't we stick to the Eden diet? The food that God gave us originally. And if you are going to eat meat, it's no sin, but if you are, please eat it right, how the way the Bible said. That's the way how to do it. So that's what I wanted to bring up. That is the health spotlight that I wanted for us to be aware. The Daniel diet or the Eden diet, God's original plan for you and I in terms of our diet. So that's what I wanted to bring to our attention. Thank you for watching this video. If you like this video, please press like. Don't forget to subscribe. We're also on Facebook at Expounding the Bible. Until then, this is your host Nathanael Morel saying, have a blessed day.